This is the Greenfield Public Schools Special School Committee meeting for Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. It's 6 p.m. We're at the Greenfield High School Library. We are not going to read the stuff about COVID requirements because we are all alone. So let's start with Secretary Johnson-Musad. Would you do a roll call, please, to call the meeting to order?
Member Karen, Member Ekstrom,
Present.
Member Hollins,
Here.
Member Proietti,
Here.
Member Johnson-Musad, I'm here, Member Wall, Mayor Wiedegardner.
Here.
We have a quorum. Did I forget anyone?
No.
Okay.
And are you you're the recorder, right?
Yeah, my name's Zach.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Zach. Welcome. So we call to order at, sorry, new computer, 6:02 p.m. And I would like to now take a motion to move into executive session to conduct, for exemption number 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. We will return to open session. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Second.
So I heard the mayor and then Member Ekstrom, yes, the Susans. And I'm sorry, let's, any no votes or any abstentions?
Madam Chair, point of order, you have to do.
I have to do roll call.
Regardless.
Roll call for executive session. Secretary Johnson-Musad, would you be so kind?
Vice Chair Ekstrom,
Yes.
Member Hollins,
Yes.
Chair Proietti,
Yes.
Member Secretary Johnson-Musad, I'm a yes, Mayor Wiedegardner.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful. Let's actually use that room right there, and we will return when we are done. Excellent. So we are returned from executive session at 6:28, and I would like a motion from someone on the school committee to approve the contract for Superintendent Dr. Christine DeBarge.
So moved. Second.
And any discussion? I don't know. Who moved, who seconded?
I moved.
You second? Okay.
Thank you.
Even if Katie's not here, I still can't tell who it is. Any discussion?
I just think it's great that we finally have a contract and a superintendent. I'm really happy you're here.
In a matter of seconds, a superintendent. A new one.
I would also like to say this has been a very smooth and, dare I say, simple process.
I think we could.
That I was pleasantly surprised at how well it went, and in doing these negotiations, we definitely uncovered a lot of places we are excited to be working together.
I agree with that.
And discovered more and more why you were our first and unanimous choice for the job.
Well, thank you, and I agree, it could not have been a better first interaction with Greenfield School Committee and public schools. It's been absolutely fantastic, and I've been in district 2 days now meeting people, and I'm more and more excited every time I meet somebody new. So this is something I'm very, very much looking forward to.
Excellent.
I'm thankful for that.
Yes. And how about a vote? All those in favor?
We should do a roll call on this.
You want to do a roll call?
Yes.
You're calling for a roll call?
I am.
All right. Secretary Johnson-Musad, go ahead.
Vice Chair Ekstrom,
Yes.
Member Hollins,
Yes.
Secretary Johnson-Musad, I'm a yes, Chair Proietti,
Yes.
Member Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Wiedegardner.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Wonderful. Welcome aboard. Why don't we actually, yes.
He's gonna do it?
And let's, we'll actually, since we have them here and we've reviewed them, is it blue? You're gonna make me sign.
Here's a pen. Here's a pen.
So I do, you'll love this, Judy. My 2 least favorite things in the world of office supplies, paper clips and blue pens.
But they tell you that you get everything with a blue pen now.
Yes.
It's kind of.
Oh, I know, because it's the original. You can tell that it's the original. If it's blue.
Yep.
I know the reason, I still don't have to like it.
These are the random discussions you will now hear.
That's okay, because I.
And then the
I don't know
third
if you want
is
to
when
have both
signatures.
initial.
When it goes on to the next page just for the signatures, that's my third thing, so we got them all.
Do you want to initial all of the pages or just sign?
I think why don't we initial the bottom of each page as well, just so we're official,
And then does
right?
anybody else have a blue pen they wouldn't mind
I have another blue
sharing?
pen.
Oh, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Judy, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I have one, Judy. Karen had one, thank you.
Oh, Karen, you're
Not that I want to make sure this happens.
Valuable.
already,
When I was a paralegal, so.
oh, that's
sticks
right.
with you.
Oh, wow.
You better start practicing for signing the diplomas.
Oh.
Isn't there a stamp for that?
No, I have to sign them all, but it's so fun to sign them all and see all
Oh, I
the
know.
names of
I
the
know.
students.
Oh, I'm not gonna be upset about my signature.
Oh, God. Wait till you see my handwriting. Need the pressure to finish first.
You're gonna win, these are sticking.
Right.
Don't look at me.
Much against my better judgment, I'll put the paper clip back.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
Okay, we'll
This
take
one's-
those. Oh, you
That's
want
for
yes,
me,
that's
right?
for you, yes,
Okay.
I will take this
Thank
one.
you. You're welcome.
Here,
I can
Thank you.
give you a copy if you want, but we'll need the original signature and the personnel file.
it's always, I wanna keep where I wrote my notes.
Okay, but I'll take the paper.
It's always better to take the important papers from me before I lose them.
That's why I'm here.
Okay,
Would you like me to relieve you of the blue pen?
like I said, oh yes, please. I need an entourage like my son has. I see that and I know I need more.
Has it always been this way?
Me? Yes.
You have a little psych session
A little
here.
extra, just a little bit extra.
I'd like to just thank Member Wall for leading the process and
definitely.
Chris
Absolutely.
for bringing it over the finish line there.
Thank you, we got the winner.
Oh, thank you,
Yep.
thank you.
And of course, we can't go without also thanking Dr. Hool
Yes.
for all she has done. You were missed in the executive session, I will say. There was a little confusion as to why you weren't joining us for that.
Are we allowed
And
to do this without
'Cause
Judy?
we-
I don't know.
Can't do anything without you.
I
Did
would
she
not
leave
let
us
you
by
out without
ourselves?
voting yes. I would have blocked the door.
But thank you for all you've done to get us to this point. We appreciate it, and you will be missed in Greenfield for sure.
Absolutely.
I couldn't be handing it off to a better person. I will say that.
Thank you.
I look forward, or better duo, the dynamic duo over there. You're in good hands. I want you to know that.
Good.
Awesome.
Knowing both these ladies, you're in good hands.
Yes.
I agree.
I think there should be a fist bump.
You got
All right. And with that, we're done with item 3 on our agenda, and we are on to item 4, our parting gift from Dr. Hool to this Greenfield School Committee is a presentation on the superintendent evaluation process. Take it away.
Thanks. While you were in executive session, we had a little kerfuffle with the projector, so we had some technical difficulties we had to wade through, but I think we're good now. So in 2011, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education really began to take a hard look at how we evaluate all educators, from teachers to principals to superintendents and everybody else in between. And so a pilot was started, and basically Carla Bear, who was an associate commissioner at the department and had been superintendent in Lowell, I believe, for a number of years, just felt like evaluation was a system that was done to people instead of done with people. And so the whole premise behind the change for the DESE was to say that this should be a collaborative process whether it's principal working with teacher, superintendent working with principal, school committee working with superintendent, that those things should be collaborative in nature. So they started a pilot in 2011. In 2012, they rolled it out to the entire Commonwealth and had to have some form of a plan in place for all educators. And the back part of your contract with teachers has what you negotiated around the parameters that the DESE set for teachers as well. So over the years, there have been some changes and updates to the process, and so this is sort of the latest and greatest based on 2019, 2018, 2019 stuff, and really, again, it's this move from it being a gotcha moment to being a professional growth moment. So that's the whole premise behind the system. So there are two lenses through which we look at educator evaluation. One is standards of practice, and in your handy dandy notebook, behind the second tab, you'll see the superintendent's and district administrators rubric. And I don't expect you to read it in detail, but here it is. And so this is one way in which educators are evaluated. They are evaluated against a set of standards and expectations. And then the second lens is through the development of some SMART goals around student learning, professional practice, and district improvement. So those are the two lenses through which this process happens. So the standards of practice, as you can see on page 1 in the rubric piece, there are 4 standards on which the superintendent gets rated. The first is in instructional leadership. The second is management and operations. Standard 3 is family and community engagement. And then standard 4 is professional culture. And under each one of those standards are what they call some key indicators. And under that is some sub-elements. So is a lot to the rubric. And basically what you try to do during the process is hone in so that you're not trying to do it all, but that you're looking at certain key indicators and elements that you want to focus on in terms of the evaluation process. So that's the first lens that gets looked at. And we'll talk a little more about that rubric in a minute. The second lens is through the development of SMART goals, and everybody's heard this acronym. This is how the DESE defines it, is that they are specific and strategic, that they are measurable, that they are action-oriented, that they are rigorous, realistic, and results-focused. That's a mouthful. And they are timed. And what the department encourages people to do is to think about coherence, so that whatever the goals are, get mapped to the standards in some way. And their recommendation is that you figure out 6 to 8 focus indicators, but they have to come at least one from each one of the 4 standards, because that's how the evaluation works. So those are the 2 lenses through which the evaluation process happens. So that Appendix D is part of the overview that's in tab 1. I won't have you go looking for it. But there are a minimum of 4 goals that are required. One that is linked to professional practice, which is linked to the standards. One that is linked to student learning and how you're going to improve outcomes for students. And then 2 to 4 district improvement goals. I encourage people not to go past 4 or go past 2 district improvement goals, because 4 goals is a lot, particularly in the outset of the process where you're doing this on an annual basis. That's a lot of work to do. And I also encourage people, if I were to put on my Somerville, Massachusetts accent, to work smarter and not harder. Because the goals should talk to each other in some way, shape, or form. They shouldn't be 4 different discrete things that somebody is doing. So you might have a district improvement goal that links to the student learning goal. You might have a district improvement goal that links to the professional practice goal. And somehow they should all talk to each other in some sort of coherent way. That's important piece of this whole process. And stop me at any time to ask questions. I'm good with that, or we can wait till the end. however you want to do that. So let's talk about the process of how this all happens. So the department put together this sort of evaluation cycle, and it's akin to a process known as action research, which is what I used with students writing dissertations back in my higher ed days. But it starts with a self-assessment, and we'll go into more detail about all of these. And then there's some analysis, setting of goals, and developing a plan. So the superintendent basically does this part first. This is a collaborative effort between the superintendent and the school committee. The plan gets implemented, again, collaboratively across the year. Halfway through the cycle, there's sort of a formative moment where you take a look at how is progress going on the goals. It's also a time where you might adjust what's going on with the goals, because if you're like me and you're an overachiever, sometimes you bite off a little more than you can chew and things get in the way, or pandemics get in the way, and what you thought you were going to do turns out to be not what you're doing. So it gives you a chance to tweak at that point. At the end of the cycle, you do a summative evaluation, which then feeds back into the whole cycle that gets done again. So let's go through some of the steps here. So the self-assessment, basically the superintendent initiates this process and uses 3 sources of data to kind of take a self-reflective look in terms of what she thinks she needs to be doing moving forward. So obviously looking at the standards in the rubric and saying, here are some professional growth areas that are, looking at Greenfield, I think I need to focus on. Looking at some data about student learning and where student learning stands at the moment, and what you might think is going on with the data that would, again, feed those goals. And then your district improvement plan and progress. And I know you have a pretty old plan, and that's probably something you're going to want to flesh out more as a team moving forward. When we did the reset of the FY22 budget, we did talk about the multi-tiered systems of support in the acceleration roadmap. I did put that in the back of your binders, so if you want to take a peek at some of that stuff. But those would be the things that the superintendent would begin this process, is looking at these 3 different things and saying, okay, where are my strengths? Where do I feel like there could be some growth for not only the district, but for myself as a superintendent, and come up with a plan from there. Susan?
Yeah, we have come up against this previously. I've been part of this process a couple of times. And the question that always arose was how, we didn't necessarily believe or agree with what the superintendent felt like should be assessed.
Mm-hmm.
And so at what point do you say, I'm glad that's what you think, but that's not what we think.
Mm-hmm.
And so where does that cross?
That leads me. Look at that segue.
Thank you. We had a really hard time.
Yeah.
A couple of times, really, and it was appropriate that we had a difficult time with it.
Right. So again, what Dr. DeBarge is going to do is she's going to sit down and go through this process, and she's going to present her analyses of where does the district stand, looking at student data, looking at directions that the district wants to go in, looking at the fact that she now has an assistant superintendent that can lead the charge with curriculum and instruction, all of those things, and saying, here's where I think we need to grow, where I need to help push the district to the next level to really move that needle. So then Dr. DeBarge will propose those 4 goals. What is her professional practice goal? And in the first tab, the overview, they give you some samples of things that you can kind of think about, whether it's engagement with the community, as new to the community, and how does, I feel like I'm talking about it in the 3rd person. I should,
Sorry.
But I mean, how you might interface with the community might be a professional practice goal, those kinds of things. And then within those goals, you set some progress benchmarks, where you think you're going to be, and then map them to the focus indicators, most likely under family and community engagement in the rubric for something like that. That discussion then happens in an open session, and then you come to a mutual agreement. And then the school committee votes the plan. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the superintendent, you know, hopefully there's a good give and take and negotiation around that, and then you come to an agreement and you vote the plan. And there's a little form at the end of the rubric that you can use to sort of document all of that stuff. But that's basically where that whole process comes from, is that, you know, Christine's gonna do her thing. She's gonna say, this is what I see, this is what I bring to the table, this is where I think we need to move forward, here are the 4 goals I am promoting, and then you have that conversation back and forth with each other, and then come to a mutual agreement, and then have a vote. All of this process does take place in open public session, and we'll talk about why in a couple of minutes. So, any questions on that part? Susan?
I have a question. I wanted to follow up on what Susan said. In addition to what Susan said on that issue, one of the issues was the school committee didn't have its own goals. And because we didn't have our own goals as elected representatives of the community, like, you know, here's where we want to be in 10 years, or here's something, whatever. And what was happening was the school committee was like working for the superintendent, you know, and there was this feeling like, it just came up all the time, like, who's the governing body, who's the superintendent? So it's important that the school committee also thinks of goals, and then the superintendent knows what the school committee is hoping for the community and can work with that. You know, it isn't just superintendent goals. That was a problem for us. That gets to what Susan was talking about.
Because basically, it really should work sort of a vertical process up and down, so that one of the things that you'll probably do, I'm sure with a little bit of Justin's help, or mine, depending on who winds up here, but to come together to talk about what is the district improvement plan moving forward. Your plan is very old. So, and particularly, even if it wasn't old, you got a new superintendent coming in, it's time to relook at those things and to think about, where do we want to go? Where are we as a district, and where do we want to be in 3 years, 5 years? It's tough to go any further than 5. I don't recommend it. I've seen school committees go 10 years out, but just even the rapid change of technology and its impact on teaching and learning is such that 10 years is a big stretch. So 3 to 5 years. And then I've also seen district improvement plans that have 90 gazillion goals and actions. That is undoable. So, you know, again, just kind of coming down, you know, sort of funneling your ideas to be targeted and focused on 2 or 3 things that you really want to get accomplished and why that is. So I think part of this whole process is that you all have that conversation together. What's the district improvement plan? Then Dr. DeBarge knows, if that's a district improvement plan, what is my role or my piece in it? And then she talks to, you know, Assistant Superintendent Patnode, who said, you know, says, this is your piece of it. It then works through the principals. It then works through the teachers, and so, and also the support personnel as well, so that everybody is focused together toward improving outcomes for the students of Greenfield, and that's the ultimate prize. So that's the hope, is that it's one of the things I encountered when I came here, and I think we talked about it, is that this is a district in silos, and that people are not working towards a common end. And how do we help the district both horizontally and vertically sort of be as one, so that every child gets an equitable shot at the same learning outcomes? Because that's hugely important. So that's a great point. Thank you, Member Hollins.
I have a question.
Sure.
Your timeline up there suggests analysis and goal setting meeting early fall.
Mhm.
I presume you're talking about early fall of this year.
Yep.
I mean, she will have just started.
Right.
So if she begins with a self-assessment, she hasn't had a lot of
Right.
self to assess.
Right.
at that
But
point.
it may flow out of,
But
in
I
the
think
early fall,
because
having
of the-
that conversation
yeah.
about what is the district improvement plan,
Yeah.
and then she can
Right.
plug right into that.
Because the lack of goals, as
Mhm.
you say, and an old district improvement plan means that we have a fair amount of work to do this
Yeah.
early fall,
Yes, you
I
do.
think. Thank you. What's work? It's another job.
Yeah. See, all the fun you signed up for? So, yep. So again, that process all happens at a public meeting, but to redo your district improvement plan is a great place to start. Where Christine can bring some data to the table, you as a school committee can say, okay, so how do we want to move the needle? What do we want to do to improve outcomes for all children in the Greenfield Public Schools? And how are we going to do this work? And then her charge is to operationalize the policy work that you do as a committee. And then the district's job then is to, how do we come together? How does everybody fit? Because no matter whether you're teaching kindergarten or AP Physics, or you're a principal, or you're a director of student services, or whatever, everybody has a piece of that pie. So that helps staff too, to know what the plan is from the school committee level. What is that policy plan that you want to put in place? So that's huge. That's a huge part of this whole process, and it's probably going to be more of a collaborative process, even at the self-assessment level, than it might be otherwise. So once the plan is set, after all that work that Mayor Wiedergartner just talked about, then you start the implementation process. So basically, the superintendent implements her piece of the puzzle with the support of the committee and, resources. So how are we making use of the general fund, grants, revolving accounts? How are all of those resources being targeted to help make the plan live? And then from a policy perspective, what does she need from all of you to be able to help move the needle? Do policies need to be reviewed, updated, and such? And then there's a collection of evidence that happens throughout this process, and it happens all year long. This is a great way to sort of frame your agendas for school committee, is once you have all of this set, then your agenda is around whatever the focus areas are, or whatever the goals are that you've set, and then that drives your discussion and decision making. So that can be really helpful. So what's evidence? What does that mean? So it is, in the DESE's eyes, the strategic collection of high quality artifacts. What's an artifact? Could be a document, could be a budget, could be a video, could be, watching the superintendent present the budget, any of those kinds of things that happen. What I have discovered with a lot of people is that oftentimes you get the wheelbarrow, even electronically, of evidence from teachers in particular, where you get bombarded with evidence. And nobody has time to sift through that at all. So the thought is, be strategic about it. A few examples, high quality evidence, and what is high quality evidence. And I think that's something that even in working with the principals this year, there's not a whole lot of calibration about what is high quality. So, something that demonstrates the action steps that are being taken. And I'll give you an example. In another district that shall not be named, I had a principal who presented me with a PDP certificate as evidence of her work. Now, PDPs are the Massachusetts nomenclature for professional development points that they all need for relicensure. So CEUs, think whatever. And I said to this principal, this tells me you went to a conference. It doesn't tell me what you did with the information. And I got bombarded with lots of that kind of stuff. So began to help that principal understand that I just want a few strategic things. I want to know how you're going to use the information from the conference that you attended. So then the next piece of evidence was that I got an agenda where she was going to share this information. I actually went to the meeting to watch the meeting in action. Bless you. So that I could get a sense of that from my own eyes about what was happening. And actually it was a great job at a faculty meeting bringing in, a community childcare provider who was doing before and after school care and talking about how we're aligning things instructionally with what's going on in the aftercare program. So a lot of really good things happened, but I didn't learn that from a PDP certificate. I saw her agenda, I saw the notes, and actually watched the meeting in action. So just thinking about that notion of volume of evidence is not necessarily something that you as a school committee want. I don't think you want to leaf through pages and pages and pages of documents, but a few strategic things, like the FY23 budget, for example, or the FY22 budget when it gets reset again in the fall, you know, something like that, and seeing how the budget links to the plans, you know, that you're making together. That's a high quality piece of evidence versus a lot of little newsletters that were sent out or something. Not that that information isn't useful, but what's high quality? And those are some things that, again, part of your discussion together. What's high quality evidence that you want to be gathering around this whole process? So then there are 2 points at which you start measuring the outcomes of the evaluation process. The first is the formative assessment. That takes place halfway through the cycle, and basically is measuring progress on the goals. So again, superintendent comes and presents a report on what she thinks has happened in terms of the progress. You all look at that and you rate those goals, and we'll talk about the ratings around that or the progress on those goals. And then sometimes that's a good moment to adjust. You know, again, a pandemic comes through and changes, the whole plan gets thrown out the window because you got something else to deal with. Or, you know, timelines didn't work out for whatever the reason, and so you need to elongate them or something like that. So the formative moment is a moment where you sort of adjust how things are going, or they're going along a little more quickly, so I'm gonna add a little more stuff into it or whatever. The summative evaluation, that's the moment where the superintendent gets evaluated at the end of the cycle, and gets evaluated both on the standards as well as on the goals. And we'll talk about all of that in a little bit. And then that's also a point where you can begin to have that conversation about what does the next cycle look like as you go through all of this. Now, the DESE has changed some things in the past year or so. Superintendents who are new to a district could have up to 3 years of a 1-year plan. So you start in the fall, formative in mid-year, and summative in the spring. They also say for district level administrators, somebody who's new to the role, like Karen, even though Karen's been in the district for a long time, she's new to the role, so it might be an annual process. You can decide at some point to go into a 2-year thing. They say 3 years, but if you want to do it sooner, you can. So that makes the process a 2-year process. So you start with the goal setting in year 1. The formative assessment moment doesn't happen until the end of year 1, and then the summative is at the end of year 2. So those are the 2 plans that are out there right now. So again, it's just trying to figure out, you know, do you start with a 1 year and then move into a 2 year, and when that moment happens. So that's something you get to decide together. Then, so again, public meeting. All of this happens in public. So again, superintendent would present you with a report on her progress on the goals. You would review said report. You'd offer some feedback, assess that progress at that point, and then if there's any mid-cycle adjustment that you all agree to, you know, like if it were me, I'd be saying to you, okay, so I bit off a little more than I can chew, so I may need to slow this process down because that's me. So that is sort of how this phase of the assessment piece works. And we get to the summative assessment. Yes.
Wait,
Sure.
So I always have a really hard time with doing that formative assessment evaluation in public. Not because I'm looking to hide anything from anyone, but because it feels like someone needs to be on the defense the entire time. And that's never my goal, ever. But I feel like if we say anything that is less than glowing, then the world explodes and people are expecting ridiculous outcomes. And so I don't know how to get around that, other than I just need to suck it up, buttercup, and move on.
You can't, and we'll talk about why. You can thank the town of Wayland. For not one, but 2 court cases. So we'll talk about those in a second. So when you get to the summative point, you've gone through this year-long process, and now you're looking at the standards and you're trying to do performance ratings. Those are required at the end of the cycle by the DESE. They have to be submitted to the DESE on an annual basis and whatever. So that all has to be done. And the DESE has, as you'll see in a couple of seconds, 4 ratings if you're not familiar with them: exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, and unsatisfactory. And proficient's a pretty high bar. And so for overachievers like me, it's kind of hard to be proficient. But if you look at the rubric, you'll notice that the practice for proficient is very, very high. And so to get to exemplary, really what you're doing is looking at I just lost my train of thought. Okay. So what you're really looking at is exemplary is sort of, this is a model person that other people need to come and see. This is how incredibly fabulous they are, which Christine is. But, I pretty much got proficient when I sat in the chair full time, and, I learned to live with it because I'm an overachiever. Not that any of you have noticed that about me. Proficient is a pretty high bar. So this is really, your superintendent of the year or whatever. Needs improvement means there's places to grow. If it's unsatisfactory, that's a whole other animal. So each one of the standards has to be rated individually, and then there has to be an overall rating. So the only caveat is that one has to have proficient or higher in instructional leadership in order to get proficient or higher in the overall ratings. If this for some reason is needs improvement, that's as high as the totality of the ratings goes. So just so you're aware of that whole process as well. So that's the first lens in which that happens. So again, if you were to look at that superintendent rubric and you were to go down a page or 2 and start to begin to look at those 4 ratings, you'll see that the bar for practice is set pretty high at the proficient level. So it's just learning to live in that place and know that that's a great place to live. Then the second place you have to rate the superintendent is on the goals themselves. Whether she exceeded them, she met them, she made significant progress on them, made some progress, or did not meet. Again, the did not meet might be a bit problematic, but some of the goals, even though it's a 1-year plan, really may be multi-year goals because there's a lot that needs to be done. So to come out of year 1 with significant progress, knowing that we're going to move that goal into another year is not a terrible thing. So it's not like you're, whatever. I think if you get down here, it might be that you should be having conversations before you get to this point about why you might be in this place. But these 3, are really great ratings to have. Before they had 2 years for superintendents, oftentimes I would get significant progress or, on a goal because we knew I couldn't get it done in 1 year. And so it had to go into the next year. So
Should we, as a committee, be working to set goals that can be met in 1 year, or it would be a stretch to meet them in 1 year? Or like what level of challenge should a 1-year goal be?
I think if you were to say, look at your district improvement plan, it might be how much of that goal could be accomplished. You set some goal in your district improvement plan. How much of that goal could be accomplished in the space of a year? And the way I've laid out district improvement plans in my day is, hi, here's the goal, here are the action steps, here are the people who are responsible for said action steps, and here's the timeline. So that as a district, you're saying, okay, over the next 3 years, we're gonna have all curriculum rewritten. You know, talking off the top of my head, it's probably more like 5 years. But in year 1, we're gonna get all of our English language arts curriculum. We're gonna get that house in order. So then that becomes sort of the 1-year goal, you know, as it were. So they kind of flow out of each other. So yeah, going through that whole process of the district improvement plan is going to help you have a sense of the totality, and is going to be able to help Dr. DeBarge be able to funnel that down to say, this is what I think I can accomplish in a year. And she hands it off to Karen to do the curriculum piece if that's the goal. So, you know, but I mean, yep. So, you know, and then Karen then is getting principals and teachers to work with her to make sure that the goal gets accomplished. And that's what you want, is everybody's on the same page with what is it we're trying to accomplish, and when are we going to get the pieces of it done. So that's a huge thing. So this gets into the when and the where the process takes place. In tab 3 of your binder are 2 court cases centered on the town of Wayland, Massachusetts. The first one is the district attorney for the Northern District versus the school committee of Wayland in 2009. Went to the Supreme Judicial Court. Long and short, 2 things they did wrong. They deliberated via email over the superintendent's evaluation, which is a violation of the open meeting law. And number 2, they posted the executive session at which the discussion was had about the superintendent's evaluation as a collective bargaining session, not as a non-union contract session. So when public records requests were obtained of minutes of meetings and emails, the SJC said, you can't be doing that. Now, what they also did, kind of what came out of that, was that you can do some of this stuff in executive session if it's tied to the superintendent's compensation package. But the caveat is, you can't use compensation as the excuse to not do this publicly. So this was the Supreme Judicial Court who said, forevermore, superintendents will be evaluated in public session. 9 years later, the Board of Selectmen in Wayland faced a civil suit. And in that civil suit with the town administrator, so the mayor can appreciate this a little bit, they also deliberated via email. Not only did they deliberate via email, but they were sort of tallying their ratings of the town administrator, not in open session either. So that decision for both town administrators and superintendents drove the fact that when this is all done, you will each do a set of ratings on the superintendent. They will somehow get to the chair who will compile them, and then they are presented in open session. Lots of ways that can be done. Again, to avoid the email deliberation thing, oftentimes emails will get sent to, say, the executive assistant for the superintendent or some other neutral party, or I've actually built Google Forms for school committees so that every member gets to put their ratings in the form, and then out come the data because it was in a form, so it gets electronically sorted, and then that's pretty clean. And that process, we actually built one when I was at the Greenfield Commonwealth Virtual School, and it worked pretty well there, and I've passed that along to a couple of other districts. And again, because you're putting into an electronic form, the electronic form data say what they say, and then you go from there. One of the caveats that both MASS and MASC say about this is that people oftentimes are tempted to do an average score, and they sort of dissuade you from doing that a little bit, because if there is an outlier, you know, one member, present company excluded, but one member, you know, has an axe to grind or an agenda or whatever, you know, does the superintendent in a negative way, but everybody else is positive, it can skew the ratings. So some sort of compilation that the chair then takes on and then talks through the compilation at the open public meeting. So, yeah.
Can you share your Google Form system with us before you leave?
Sure, anything for you.
Proprietary.
Anything for you.
We had, I think the last time I participated, we had a hard copy system, and it was challenging because not all of us necessarily answered the questions that were asked, and sometimes it's hard to determine, you know, I think the electronic version can eliminate some of those errors. Yeah.
And it's a case of the rubric has changed a little bit, but again, it's easy enough to rebuild, you know, and then just hide the particular indicators that you're not focusing on, so that doesn't become part of the whatever, and then you can open them up again.
So, to make sure I understand, we have to do the evaluation process as individual members, and those get to the chair.
Right.
And then when it is discussed in open session, it's the job of the chair to share that information.
Right.
So it's really, to answer your question from earlier, Member Ekstrom, it's about how it's presented
Right.
and how you structure the conversation, much like how we made a decision to hire a new superintendent in an open session, so that you don't feel as if it's not a cooperative, you know, it feels collaborative and cooperative rather than feels like someone's being rated on their performance. We're all being evaluated on our progress towards goals.
Yeah.
I have that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
it is a growth moment, and that was the whole purpose of this system, that it not be a gotcha moment. And if you're having conversations at every single meeting, and this becomes sort of the framework for your agenda, there should be no surprises for anybody in any of this. You know, that when you get to the end, nobody should be surprised.
It's also part of our policies that we evaluate ourselves, and that might be another training we need to have. How do we evaluate ourselves as a school committee? Because I feel like that contributes to it being a dialogue, that we all are professionals, we're all working, and we all have areas of improvements, and we're all setting goals for ourselves. It's not just on the superintendent.
Right. Yeah, that's great. That's a, you know, it's a great thing. Then it is definitely a growth moment for everybody, and it doesn't necessarily feel like the superintendent is just kind of out there somewhere. So that's a great thing about all of that. So, but anyway, the town of Wayland has been the reason why this process happens in the way that it does. And both cases went to the Supreme Judicial Court, so that was an interesting. Yes, and especially when the district attorney is the plaintiff. That's a little scary.
Right.
No, it's not a silver suit from some reporter, or no offense meant down at the end of the table, you know, who's looking for whatever, but this was the district attorney who said, you know what, you guys, no. So, yeah, it's pretty serious stuff when the district attorney calls you out on something. So let's just kind of summarize the whole process. So again, there's either an annual or a biannual plan. That's again something that, you know, you figure out how that's going to happen and when that happens. So that you know, the superintendent's preparing draft goals, you have a discussion, you agree to them, and then you vote. And hopefully that discussion is collaborative and some give and take, so that it's not just you know, people digging their heels in and you know, being stubborn about things. That you know, that can happen. You know, not that anybody on this school committee would be stubborn. And then, so that happens at the beginning of the cycle, the formative assessment and and this is such a misnomer, but it's the way the state phrases it. If it's a one-year plan, it's a formative assessment, if it's a 2-year plan, because it's at the end of the year and has to be reported, it's a formative evaluation, which to me, I think defeats the purpose of being formative. If the formative is to inform the process and the goals. But unfortunately, that's how the process happens. Again, superintendent prepares that report, shares it with you at a you review together at a public meeting, and do what you need to do, and then move forward. The summative evaluation is at the end of the cycle. If it's a 1 year, it's like May, June of the first year. If it's a 2 year, it's May, June of the second year. So again, the report gets drafted, the members review it individually, the chair compiles the data, and then there's a single summative evaluation that is adopted by the school committee. And again, in materials that I shared with you at the end of tab 2 is the form that the DESE uses for that purpose. And so that's how you log all of that stuff in. So this is something Carla Beer came up with when she first put this in place, which is kind of cool, that the summative evaluation is the sum of the parts, of all of the parts in the first phase of the evaluation. You're looking at those SMART goals, you're looking at that evidence on the goals and the standards, that you're collaborating together, and that all of that, again, comes to the end in a summative evaluation that should not have any surprises. The goal being helping the school committee function well as a body, helping the superintendent do her job to the best of her ability, and ultimately improving outcomes for kids. And that's what we're all here for. So, I'll be happy to also share this with you if you want to read all of the gory details. That's the state's website. But I can certainly share this presentation with you, so that way you can click the link and see all of the happy forms and all of the stuff that's there. So, questions? Member Ekstrom.
So, does someone like Massey assist with things like this and sort of run through the process when you're first starting? Because the superintendent has a big job unto themselves, never mind corralling the school committee, and it feels a little overburdensome. I'm asking, I could be wrong,
They don't do as much of this as they did when this process first started.
Okay.
I've done a fair amount of this work with school committees and doing district plans. Justin's done as well, done a fair amount of this work. So, we have found some ways to get those kinds of things done as a group. So, it's kind of almost like you need a neutral body. You don't need the MASS, and you don't need MASC. You kind of need somebody who has no skin in the game that can help you get to where you want to be as a group.
Right. Okay.
So, Member Hollins.
Yeah, going back to Susan, just by chance, I watched the Pioneer School Committee meeting recently when they did the superintendent evaluation. And I've watched school committees struggle with this process because there's so many pages and so many rubrics and everything. And it went so smoothly. I mean, there's so many things that don't go smoothly. The woman that handled it, the person on the school committee, just everything, the whole rating, the process, I've never seen it happen so well. So you might want to get somebody who actually has done it more than someone to tell you about all the parts. Here's how we did it, because if you watch that part of the school committee, you just sit down and go, really? I mean, it wasn't more than 20 minutes at the school committee meeting, the summary. It was just smooth as could be. They came up with a guideline where they would drop off the highest rating and the lowest rating on everything, and she would just say, this was the rating for this. And I just sat there thinking, my gosh, I wouldn't think Pioneer would have been like A+ on getting this done. Of course, the superintendent resigned. But, but aside from that, it wasn't a negative evaluation either. I don't mean that, but just coincidental. But really, if you watch that, it was very surprising how well they did it, and it looked like it was effortless. And so,
Great.
I was thinking at the time maybe that person would come talk about how they did it, because it.
Great.
But my guess is that probably all throughout his cycle, conversations were happening.
Yeah.
So that when you got to the end, it made it seamless. If you're not talking about this at all during the process, then the end can be long and unwieldy. But if you're constantly looking at how things are going together, then the end should be pretty simple. It really should.
Thank you.
Glenn?
Is any part of this work done at the subcommittee level, or is there a subcommittee that kind of shepherds the process? or-
The DESI does allow for that. So you can be the committee of the whole, or you can have a subcommittee, and the chair of the subcommittee is sort of the chair of the opening process. They don't recommend that you do the summative evaluation as a subcommittee. They recommend that it is the committee of the whole that does the summative.
I'm just wondering, Dr. DeBarge, how does this compare to what you've done in Connecticut? Is it a similar process, or?
There are different ways that different boards do it in Connecticut, but I elected to use the superintendent's performance standards and came to agreement with the board to create a rubric. We didn't have to use one. But I did. I felt having an evaluation for myself that was consistent with the evaluation format that the teachers had was appropriate. But in Connecticut, the discussion about the evaluation does happen in executive session, and then a public presentation of it occurs. So, but the process is less structured than this, but really the pieces are very similar.
Okay.
Other questions on this? Other discussion? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
This was great.
My parting gift.
No, it really gives us at least like you said, a framework of, at a minimum of timeline for the year, and then also how to approach the different pieces that go into it. And I can see how you could use it to set an agenda too. Yeah. Very helpful. Thank you again.
Welcome.
That was the last thing on the agenda. I did want to check on one thing. It's a scheduling thing, so we can do it right here in open session. The regular meeting for September is on the 8th, Wednesday the 8th, which is the end of Rosh Hashanah. And if we can move that meeting to Thursday evening the 9th, I think that would be the most respectful thing for us to do for the holiday. And then I'm gonna make a note so that we can do that. I think that there was the same conflict or a similar conflict last September, I'm recalling.
Yeah.
So I wanna kind of fix that in the way we meet for upcoming years.
The Jewish holidays happen on.
I know they rotate,
So it probably,
yeah.
it might be hard to have a meeting in September that doesn't bump up against it in some
Right.
4 or 5 year
Very
period.
true, but
Yeah.
sometimes Yom Kippur is in October as well. This year, I believe it's not. I think they're like a couple of weeks apart in September. I'm looking at you, Susan Farber, because I know you know, or at least have a guess better than mine.
No, it's true, they're 2 weeks apart.
Yeah, I think they're 2 weeks apart this year, but would we have a quorum is my question on Thursday, September 9th?
That would be also the beginning of the fair. So you might want to think of Tuesday the 7th instead of the Thursday.
That's the start of Rosh Hashanah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right.
it
That's
goes
what you
back
just
2
said.
days. So
That's what you
my
just
other,
said.
if Thursday wouldn't work, I was also thinking about Monday and Tuesday of the next
I mean,
week.
I don't think that's not
It's
the
the parade.
parade.
It is.
Thursday is the parade night.
Thursday is
That's
the
right.
parade.
That's always right, yeah.
So we don't want to bump up against that. What
Yeah.
about, so I guess it would be the 13th and the 14th the following week, so Monday, the 13th, or do I have those dates right? Tuesday, the 14th?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All open for me.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, 13th and 14th.
Either day is open.
Either day would be open for the mayor. How about everyone else? Either's open for me. It looks like you're, yeah.
Planning
We won't know about Katie, but I do know she
14th.
works on Thursdays, so
Right.
probably Monday or Tuesday would be better. Does anyone have a preference for if it's Monday or Tuesday. I think I would prefer Monday.
Me too.
Okay,
So-
only
a
because
little
city
less.
council is Wednesday and our meetings go so long. I'll be hungover
What-
for city council, which is never a good thing.
What day are you talking about?
The Monday, the, what did we say, the
13th?
13th? Monday, September 13. So the regularly scheduled meeting that is scheduled currently for 9/8, that's a Wednesday, will instead be on 9/13, which is a Monday. Judy, I'll email Lauren and let her know.
Is that a 6 PM meeting?
Yeah, so when we meet the regular schedule, the 6 PM Wednesday, the second Wednesday of the month, we have the Johns on for those. In this case, we'll have to find a different location. Maybe the Johns on will be available, that's the first thing we'll check, but they seem to have stuff going every night of the week.
I just say that because my calendar has city elections set up in the gym, so there must be a primary vote on Tuesday.
Preliminary, if there
GHS
are,
Yeah.
calendar still.
if there are more, I don't think that there were enough candidates for a preliminary elections.
I don't think there's one, yeah, I haven't heard anything, and there
No.
wouldn't be enough candidates, you're right.
Yeah,
Okay.
there actually
Kathy
most
would be already
competition is for school
crying.
Yeah.
committee.
Phew!
Yeah, okay.
But good.
Thank you,
Good,
Karen.
my GHS calendar is still on here.
That's great.
So are we having a meeting on the 11th of this month?
Yeah.
Yes,
That
next
would-
week.
All right, I will not be there. Just
Okay,
letting you know.
you're on vacation, yeah, I mean, obviously, people take their
That sounds wrong.
summer vacations or whatever, and we just need a
Check
quorum.
for quorum, do we have a quorum then for next week? I'm here.
Yeah, I have it in my calendar.
Three of us.
We're good, yeah, for the changed date in September, is that what you're?
For the, I was just checking for the 11th with summer schedules, but it looks like we have a quorum for the
Yeah,
11th as well.
and Katie will be back, yeah, well, I think we'll be okay.
So September 13 and 14, have we
Again,
narrowed
is
it?
that, I have it in as a.
Monday, the 13th,
Yeah.
September.
yeah.
September
I have it
13th.
in as a 6:30 meeting, yes, no?
No, we're
6.
6 o'clock now
Always
for
6
all our
now.
meetings,
Yeah.
6 o'clock, yeah, is our start time.
Wow.
And that's, so the 13th, is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Is that the Monday? Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And it's place-based.
We haven't found, I don't know, the
But it will-
space is to be
It will
determined.
be in a place.
No, yes, it will not be, yeah,
It won't be at the John's on.
It won't be
I don't know yet.
Oh, you don't know?
I don't know yet,
in
but it won't be,
person somewhere.
it won't be remote, that's what you're asking, right? Our regular meetings, we're definitely gonna do in person, as much as we can unless public health guidance changes. And then our subcommittee meetings, and even sometimes special meetings, didn't make sense to do this as a special meeting, it remotely. But I think most of the time our special meetings could also logically be remote, at least until they revisit the legal piece of it. Yeah, so that would go through next April, for that. And then subcommittee meetings, you can absolutely do remote or by choice if the subcommittee wants to meet in person, you can. We have been doing our personnel ones, collective bargaining, remotely, so. Thank you for bringing that up. I feel like I had one other thing,
It's the 20th anniversary of September 11th. this year.
Snacks.
yeah.
Julia's anniversary.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, yes it is. I would take a motion to adjourn, since I can't remember my other thing.
Motion to adjourn.
Member Hollins in a second,
Second by Ekstrom.
and any abstentions or no votes on the motion to adjourn. We are adjourned at whatever time it is.
7:28.
Perfect, 7:29,
Well done.
7:28, awesome, nice